Hi everyone, I'd like to share a few thoughts on spin fishing. Now when I was a bit of a kid, I was dragged up by my dad and my brother, and when I say dragged up, I wanted to go too. Up into the back country, we might camp out and fish in various lakes and rivers. And gee, I tell you what, I found it absolutely fantastic to be able to fish and learn off them. And so I would like to share some of the things that I learned there, just to make it a little bit easier for you when you get out there. And I want you to have good results. It's one of the easier ways to fish, and of course in order to be able to fish with a spinner you need to have some sort of rod that's going to do the job, and it's my personal opinion that you're better off with a longer rod. As you get more involved in spin fishing, you realize that it's important to cover as much water as you can, and particularly water which the fish haven't seen much in the way of people out there thrashing that water in order to be caught. So to do that, I like to see a rod of around about 8 foot or even more than that. Now I know that sounds long to you because I've come through the stage when I was young learning that all I needed was a 6 foot or a 6'6" rod, and I've often heard people say you don't want to have too long a rod in a river because you'll catch up on all the trees. But it's my experience that in actual fact it doesn't quite work like that. It sounds good in theory, but if you have a longer rod you're liable to be able to get more accuracy and you're able to cast bigger distances. Remember, you're trying to surprise the fish with what you're putting out there. And there's all sorts of other things that are important in the gear that you have as well. Like the reel. You need to have a reel of sufficient quality that if you hook a big one, you can stop it from going into snags, and you can make sure that you're able to win the battle, because at the end of the day, that all-important picture is the most important thing. And if you get yourself some line, make sure you get something which is appropriate for what you're wanting to do. Now, I am a person who thoroughly believes in braid. Now, I've had people come into my store and say, oh, look, I don't like braid, it's all a bit harsh and it doesn't really suit my needs. All I can say is that perhaps you need to look at some different types of braid. Now, over the many years that I've been involved in spin fishing, I've found that not all braids are equal. So you need to get a good quality one which is very thin, it's going to cast well, it's going to sink well, and it's going to give you really good contact. The big advantage of braid over anything else is that it casts that bit further. I can't stress this enough. The more water you cover, the more fish that you show your gear to, the more likely you are to catch fish. Now I know that there's those fish that come in real close on many occasions, but I still will say you will catch more if you cover more. So getting a good quality rod that will sell, that will cast well, and a good quality line that also couples with that, particularly with braid, you put on some sort of trace on the far end, tie on something appropriate, and away you go from there. Getting the right sort of lure is very important for the water that you're in. If you're in a lake situation, then covering big distance is often a very good thing to do. And just let me say at this stage, you're better if possible to keep walking around a situation. If you're on a lake, keep walking, moving, changing the angles that you're going on. Show different fish what you've got to offer, because if you go fish to the same fish over and over again, it's a bit like being a door-to-door salesman going up the same driveway and talking to the same person saying, would you like to buy my product? And let's face it, the time you've done that 4 or 5 times, they just want to call the cops because they don't like you annoying them. Well, the trout and the salmon won't do that, they'll just clear off. So if you've got that understanding that you need to be in a place of surprise for them, you're going to do that much better off. And there's all sorts of lures. Some of them are very traditional. You've got things like black and gold tobies, which is one of the big sellers over all the years that I've been involved in the industry. Tasmanian devils, all sorts of spoon type things that move like through the water in a very attractive way. Sometimes the fish attack because they're just annoyed. They see this little whippersnapper coming through there. They want to go and hit it. Other times they're hungry and they want to go and eat what's there. So, you know, you're using your skill and your wits against theirs. And they've got a very small brain, but they're very clever at what they do. And then there's other lures like those that are made of hard baits. So you've got some that look very fish-like and they dart through the water and bounce around. You need to be appropriate for where you're at. And don't be afraid to change. If it's not working, change the color, change the style, and change your location. Don't fish in the same place over and over again. Now I want to give you some thoughts about whether you're going to be fishing in the likes of a lake or on the likes of a river. So The thing about a lake is you've got this huge expanse of water, but there's certain places where the fish tend to congregate. And you get better at knowing where those places are the more that you do. Typically, wherever you've got a reasonable sized body of water coming in, that is a stream, you'll often get fish hanging around the mouth of that stream. The water is often coming in at a different temperature, it brings different food, and the fish will often cruise those areas. When you're casting there, fish from one side, if you can cross the other side, fish from another side. If there's other braids coming in, go and fish there. But move up and down, and don't be afraid to rest the water. Staying in the same place, fishing over and over and over to the same fish can be a particular waste of time. Great for scenery, but not really good when it comes to trying to get those fish and show that beautiful picture of that fish you've just deceived with that lure. And when you come into a river, it's a different story from a lake. Of course, a river can be anything from quite a small stream up to something massive like the Waimak or some of these other more important ones that we have in our local area here. And the more intimate the river, the more delicate you've got to be. Now, my background is more fly fishing than anything else, and one of the things I've learned from fishing in smaller streams is that you need lots of stealth and lots of accuracy. So if you're coming into a river that's got a reasonable number of fish into it, you can cast up tiny little lures, bring them down against the current. It would be my favourite thing to cast ahead of myself. And the reason I do that's very simple. See, trout in a river look upstream, and that's a huge advantage. That means I can wander up from beneath and I know that they're looking away from me when I come there. So when you go into a river, make sure you don't decide, oh, this is really nice, I'm going to walk downstream and fish to everything that's there. Remember, trout and salmon have a very good sense of smell. They can pick up the human smell, just like a deer would pick up the smell of a hunter. If the wind's in the wrong direction, that current will bring down the smell of humanity. And I tell you, lots of experience has shown me they are really clever at this, and they'll just clear off somewhere else, and you'll have to go and look for another one. But go looking upstream. Keep walking and walking. Don't spend long on an individual fish. Once they look like they're a bit scared, chances are they are really scared, and you're better off to go look for a fresh fish than you are to go and hammer that fish over and over. The chances of catching that fish become less and less with the more casts that you make. And sometimes when it's a bigger river, you can cast across and down. You need to have something sufficiently heavy so that when you cast across the current, as that current moves the line along, you want to make sure it doesn't lift it up too high and above their heads. So getting that all correctly proportioned is really important. And this is where your braid comes in, because it's much thinner than normal nylon and it gives a really good contact. So if you do get a bite, you don't have to strike so hard with the braid. Just make sure that you've got that contact, and then hang on and make sure your drag's well set, because you know what's going to happen? They're going to run. A decent sized fish will go running for a bank, and you need to make sure that when you fight that fish, that you do it from side on or downstream. Don't just stand your ground and let the thing go down below you into the rapids, then over into the next pool. You need to be able to chase that down there in order to stay on the right side of it. Otherwise, it's going to end in tears. And let's face it, once you get emotionally involved with a fish because you've just hooked it, it's very hard to lose that same fish when it hasn't quite come out right. Now, back in my day, it was a bit more difficult to go up into the backcountry and get a good day's fishing because A, the roads weren't as good, B, we didn't have anything like the amount of information which is now available to us. So if you're going to go spinning, one of the things that I'd really get you to think about is getting hold of a good range of different websites that can help you. So we have an eCan site that tells you how much rain's fallen in the backcountry. It's told you how much the river flow is going to be. So you need to know whether it's high or low, because there's nothing worse than driving all the way up to a particular spot, and I've done this on many occasions, only to arrive and find that the river's dirty, or the lake's not in a suitable situation, or the wind's just howling, as it can do in our Canterbury backcountry particularly, and you want to make sure that that's running at the best possible way. So pick those really good days. Remember, when you've just had a southerly come through Christchurch or the local area, the next day is generally beautiful up there. But if it's nice and warm in Christchurch and you can see those big rolling clouds off the top of your Alps, you know that the next day is probably still going to be on the difficult side. And if you've ever been up there in a very tempestuous northwester, you'll know that it can be quite demoralising. You start casting, unless the wind's at your back, it might blow your lures back onto who you are. But you know, if you have any issues with trying to get the right things for spin fishing, make sure you come to your local tackle shop. Basically, the people that are in these tackle shops, that's their job, is to be able to help you. And I know it's difficult. I watch people come into my store, and I love to be able to give as much information as we possibly can so that they're going to have the best results. You get better results by asking the right questions. Remember, you don't know what you don't know, and sometimes you hear these stories of people who supposedly catch heaps of fish. Well, some of them do. And it's because of what they know that makes all the difference as to whether or not they're going to catch fish. And they are more than happy to share those bits of information with you, because at the end of the day, we all want you to catch fish. That's what it's all about. It's a marvellous resource. Remember, we're in New Zealand, the place that people pay lots of money to come and go fishing. And you can do it simply for the price of a licence and a little bit of petrol to get there. Make sure you do it.